Welcome to this episode of Let's Be Civil. Our next guest on Let's Be Civil is Brian Ledsinger. Brian is a graduate of Texas State University's Concrete Industry Management program. His first position was with Structural Preservation Systems as a project engineer in New York. Recently, Brian returned to Texas and now works for Texas Moisture Protection as a project manager and estimator. So, hey, everybody. Today I've got Brian Ledsinger with me. This is the Let's Be Civil YouTube podcast for people that are civil engineers or working in that kind of a field. And so Brian's actually in Houston, working for, like everybody, most people from home. And he is a former Texas State student who actually left Texas to go to New York, of all places. I guess it was for the older people that might be listening. He went for the salsa. You know that commercial?
For the pasta.
Okay. No, there's an old commercial about salsa being made in New York City. So you just have to be old. Yeah. There was a Pace Picante salsa commercial in New York City. So you went to New York. You didn't go to New York. Where in New York did you actually end up?
New York City.
There you go.
Yeah.
So you could have made pasta, or you could have made salsa and been a person on commercials on TV. So, let's do this. Why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself? Going to school. What program were you in? Because it's unique. And then we'll talk a little bit about going to New York and what did you do there and what brought you back to Texas and that sort of thing. So give us kind of a little bio of Brian.
All right. So
I won't say the life of Brian. You won't understand that one either. So.
No, I understand that reference.
Okay.
You get it with having the name. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go.
So I grew up in Dallas. School in Grapevine. Hopefully, some of you went there. Started my undergrad at Texas State University, doing philosophy first. Decided that wasn't the route. Switched over to CIM, which is Concrete Industry Management. Kind of followed one of my buddies that I met there that he was doing. So switched into that, loved it. Professors were awesome. The classes were awesome. Learned a whole lot. Really liked the whole engineering aspect of it. Met Dr. Schimmel, I think in my senior year or maybe my junior year. We butted heads a little bit at first, but.
Oh, it's fun. It's all fun.
Yeah, became friends. So I always wanted to go to New York City. That was just kind of a dream. So I made every effort to find a company that was in New York. So I remember one day a company named Structural came into one of our classes. It may have been the Capstone Class.
Yeah, I think so.
Presented on the company, what they do, everything, and it really sounded good to me because in the CIM program, a lot of the classes are geared towards ready-mix concrete, precast concrete, things of that nature, and that's where a lot of the students typically end up in ready-mix precast, which is a great industry. It just wasn't for me. So I wanted something a little bit different. Structural was doing something different. They were doing concrete repair, building strengthening, cathode protection, stuff like that, which was a lot of buzzwords, but pretty cool stuff. It lured me in. So I started talking to the guy that came and presented to our class. He actually isn't with Structural anymore, but I told him basically, what do I have to do to get to New York? What do I have to do? I will do anything. So he put me in contact with the hiring, HR person at Structural, and I hounded her for, 6 weeks, maybe twice a week, emailed, called her, here's my resume. What do I need to do? What do I need to do? Finally got in contact with Steve Camisa, who was he was the branch manager at the time of the Long Island City location, which is in Queens. It's right across the river from the city. He's now the VP of something up there. He's still in Queens, but he's moved up a little bit. So finally got in contact with Steve, hounded Steve for 2 or 3 weeks, and got an interview with them. So they flew me up to New York for a couple days, interviewed with Steve, drove around the city, visited some job sites. It was like a half-day interview with this guy. And I guess I nailed the interview because I got an offer about a week later. Immediately accepted. It was new.
You were going.
So yeah, I was going. I didn't care about anything else. So accepted the offer, and my start date was February 1st, 2016. So I was in Houston at the time because we had just graduated, and got the truck all packed up, got a U-Haul trailer, set a route, and I drove up to New York City. It took me 3.5 days. I drove to Mobile, Alabama. Then I drove to Charlotte, North Carolina, stayed with a friend there. Then I drove to Winchester, Virginia. And I was trailing the huge snowstorm of that year, Jonas. So when I got to Virginia, there was about 4 feet of snow on the ground.
Oh, wow.
Never seen that. My dog went nuts. She was fun. So anyway, I started in New York. I moved to Harlem. So I was living on 152nd Street and Broadway with a couple of buddies, and started working as structural as a project engineer. It's an entry-level position. We do a lot of parking garages up there. So the parking garages are made out of concrete, but they're not well maintained. That's one of the, things about concrete repair is you got to repair the infrastructure or it's all going to crumble. So New York is a very old city, and there's tons of repair work to do. So our bread and butter was parking garages. So, cars bring in salty water in the wintertime. They put salt down all over everything to keep the snow melted. And as put salt on concrete, it's going to deteriorate the concrete. It's going to get in and just do what it does to concrete.
Right. Eat it.
Yeah, basically just eats it away. Yeah. So go in there. What we did was we go in there with chipping guns, jackhammers, chip out all the bad concrete. You got to shore it all up, make sure it doesn't fall in on you when you're taking all the concrete out. And then, this is very simple terms here. Just chip it out, form it up, shore it up, and then put back new concrete. And that's, we replace steel if we needed to replace steel. So that was, the bread and butter. That's kind of what built the company in New York to start. So Structural is a big company. It's international. They've got offices all over the United States. They've got offices in Abu Dhabi, Dubai, Qatar. So we have a pretty big Middle East presence too. And a lot of what we started doing, I would say in my second half at Structural, was getting into building strengthening. So that's, we did a lot of carbon fiber strengthening and section enlargements for concrete. So, in New York, there's no room to build outward. You have to build up to, create more space for tenants or whatever you need. So in order to do that, there's a lot of older buildings. Like, for example, we had a project in Queens that was an old warehouse. It was like a 100-year-old warehouse. And they, instead of tearing the whole thing down, they're like, we want to build a 4-story apartment building on top of it. How can we do that? So, well, you can tear it down and build a new one, or we can go in and basically enlarge every column by about 6 inches. So these were round columns. You go in there, and this is actually really cool. So in order to get the bond from the new concrete to the old concrete, you need to roughen the surface. There's a an ICRI specification called CSP, and you have to get it to like a CSP 8, which is really, really rough.
Okay.
And in order to do that, you'd have to, sit there with a chipping gun for days just to get one column clean. Or you can hire a company that has a 30,000 PSI pressure washer to come in there and blast them all out in a week. So these guys walk in with these giant swords and just, this thing, it'll cut you in half if you're not careful. Like, it's super powerful water. And they just blasted these columns and got the surface all roughed up, saved a bunch of money there, saved a bunch of time there. Drilling new steel, custom formwork, form up the columns, pump in new concrete, and you got to pump it under pressure. So standing there, pumping the concrete, and you hear the form start creaking and popping. You got to hit it a little bit more just in case, it's got to be under pressure, but you don't want to.
Right, you don't need to mess on your hands.
It's a real coordination problem because you've got the guy at the pump truck out on the street, and he's, 200 feet away from where you are, and you've got the radio in your ear, like, give it another little tap, tap. And it's kind of just like, is this going to be the one that blows up in my face? I think we had one blowout on that project. That wasn't my project, but it went pretty well.
So remember you said something about the Capstone class?
Yeah.
And didn't we do something where I made you try to figure out how you were going to accomplish some task? Wasn't that your capstone project?
My capstone project was, I remember the building. It was like it was a concrete building.
Yeah. How were you going to build it?
How are we going to build it? So we had, different sets of like, okay, how are we going to build it? Are we going to do precast? Are we going to do cast in place?
Right.
Are we going to do tilt up? Are we stuff? So
how are you going to accomplish the end goal? So it sounds to me like what you've been doing is how do you accomplish the end goal? So it looks like that professor wasn't such a fathead after all, huh?
It definitely helped. The thing is, especially at structural, it wasn't about. We know how to do it, right? But what's the best way to do it?
Correct.
It was providing solutions, and it wasn't just providing a solution. It was providing a viable solution. Like, yeah, we can knock the whole building down and rebuild it, or we can come in there and save you guys a year by just enlarging the columns, and then you can just build on top of it. So, man,
if you could only go back and tell yourself that when you were in Capstone.
Yeah, I think I would go other points in my life before that.
Okay.
So
how long were you in New York City?
I was in New York for about 4 years.
So did you really like it?
Oh yeah, it was awesome.
So it's everything that you had hoped you were going to get out of going to New York.
Yeah, it was great. It was great. It was a great learning experience, definitely for construction. It's just different up there.
Mm-hmm. So different living, different working.
I think I had kind of a unique experience because I have a car. Nobody has a car up there, so I go every day, it was nice to have a car. It was kind of a pain to park it. You had street parking and all that stuff, but it was nice to have a car. The projects, I had a project in Connecticut. I had a project, deep out into Long Island, in Brooklyn, New Jersey. Like, I got to visit a lot of places that are kind of hard to get to, even though it's like all kind of close together up there. If you live in Harlem and you've got a buddy that lives in Brooklyn, they may as well be in another state. It takes 2 hours to get there. So if you got a car, it makes a big difference. I had a project on Wall Street, just a lot of different areas that we got to go and experience every day because of the job. So that was pretty cool. That's another thing about working for a subcontractor versus a GC versus a plant is, a GC, you're most likely going to be put on a big project and you're going to be there for however long the project lasts. With a subcontractor, you're going to be moving around, going to different projects, learning different things on each project, meeting a whole bunch of people, expanding your network rapidly. that's another thing that lured me to this company is subcontractor work for the most part. And there's a lot of different types of jobs that you can get on. So there was a, go ahead.
No, you go.
I was going to say, we had another project in Brooklyn. This was a cathodic protection project. So
what does that mean?
So cathodic protection is basically protecting the reinforcing. So what we did on this project is, and this is like super technical, you know, I can't go into like super technical parts of it, but what we did on this project is it was a train tunnel, and it was an old decommissioned train tunnel. The thing was like 100 and something years old, super old. And they had recommissioned this thing for, it was a maintenance tunnel for jet fuel lines. So these jet fuel lines came up, they're underground jet fuel lines going to JFK Airport. And they came up from underground inside the tunnel for maintenance. So they could like inspect the lines, they could send probes through the lines, do all that kind of stuff. Well, the tunnel was 100 years old, and there was guys going in there all the time to do maintenance on the line. And the concrete, it was a 14-foot tall circular tunnel. And the concrete was falling off the ceiling and coming down and hitting the pipes, and hopefully didn't hit anybody, but that was the concern. How do we stop this from happening? So we went in there. So what was happening was, you know, it rains, water goes through the ground, gets on the concrete tunnel, penetrates the concrete, gets to the steel, corrodes the steel expands, concrete chips off and falls. How do we stop that from happening? Or how do we mitigate it at least? How do we slow it down? So the answer was cathodic protection. So what we did was we went into the tunnel, and that was a whole other set of things I could talk about for an hour. How the hell we even get into the tunnel and get our machines in there and all that stuff. It was crazy. But anyway, we get in the tunnel, and we get our boom lifts in there, and the tunnel it's for some reason there's sand in there. I don't know how they got the sand in there. So that was a problem, trying to get these things to drive on the sand. And basically we got like three or four boom lifts in there. The tunnel's a mile long, by the way. It was a really long tunnel. And we just had our guys on the boom lifts, and we made these kind of like moving shields to cover the jet fuel lines. So we had these big moving shields on wheels that we made. And you just chip out the concrete, go up there and find the concrete that's deteriorated, that looks bad, chip it all out, have it fall down, clean it up, take it out. So then you've got this whole tunnel full of, voids basically. And it's, we had a structural engineer on site, and it didn't compromise the structural integrity of the tunnel at all. It was just, it was make safe work. So then what we did was we stopped all the leaks by chemical grout injection. So identify every leak, drill into the leak, pump in chemical grout. This type of chemical grout, when it comes in contact with water, it expands. So we would drill through the tunnel, through the backside of the tunnel, after we did some core samples to find out the thickness of the concrete, which was like 14 inches, super thick concrete. 14 inches, pump in the chemical grout, stop the leak. Really like simple terms for what we were really doing. And then after that, we began metallizing. So this is the cathodic protection, the metallizing. So what it is it's a sacrificial anode. So the sacrificial anode we put on the concrete will corrode before the steel. So it sacrifices itself to save the steel, basically. So metallizing is a process. It's really cool. So you get a welder, a compressor, and you put them together. So how it works is you have zinc and aluminum leads, I guess. And when you touch them with the welding process, I don't know exactly how it works, but this is what it does. You melt these two together, and then you blast air into it, and it sprays liquid metal. It's like you're painting with molten metal.
Okay.
So every area that we chipped concrete out that had exposed steel, we sprayed with this metal, and it has to touch the steel, and if it touches the steel, it's protected. So we went through the whole tunnel and sprayed this stuff, basically painted liquid metal into the tunnel, and that's how you protect it. And it's supposed to last 10 to 15 years, so we have we actually, I would say, I don't know how many, it was like 40 sections in each section. So maybe like every 400 feet, we installed these little monitoring panels. So we drilled into the tunnel, into the concrete, attached to the steel, and the rebar inside the concrete. Right. And then we can plug in our equipment in there. And the whole tunnel's connected. It's still all connected. So you can plug in, at the end of the tunnel, and then at the end of the other side, and still see you're all connected. That's continuity is what the term is. So there was rebar continuity. We had to do tests on that just to make, because if it wasn't continuous, then it wouldn't work. It just wouldn't work. So we can actually monitor it from our office. You can look up and go, all right, our capacity is whatever it is. This is how it's doing. This is how long we think it's going to last. So we can actually monitor it from pretty much anywhere, and update the client. Hey, here's how the tunnel's doing, and that's pretty much it. I mean, it was a really unique project. I think it was two phases. It was a make safe work, and then we went in there and metallized. It was in a really bad part of Brooklyn, one of the worst areas. We had some run-ins with homeless people. There was 4 tunnels, and the one all the way to the right was ours. The one with and there was like gates and alarms and stuff. I mean, it's jet fuel for an airport. Like you'd think it'd be more secure than it was. There was not like a security guard on site all the time. And then next to that tunnel was still a train tunnel. So we had to do all this stuff with the railroad company to make sure everybody was safe. And then the 2 tunnels next to that were decommissioned. They were empty. So we used the tunnel all the way on the left to drive our guys and everything. It wasn't like super tall, so you couldn't get machines in there. But if you needed to be at one end of the tunnel, you didn't want to walk through that sand because it took forever and you'd be tired. So you would drive on the other side of the tunnel. But there was homeless people in there, crazy people, making threats. I mean, it was wild, especially in that area in Brooklyn. It was not a good area.
How long did the project last?
That project, through 2 phases, was probably a year, I would say, maybe 8 to 12 months, because we had there was actually so when we started phase 2, there was a huge snowstorm that came through. So now I'm sweating because I'm like, how are we going to get down there? It's going to take us weeks to move all this stuff out of the way, to get all the snow out of the way. Like, how am I going to get down there? And like, how am I going to make any money on this job if I waste 3 weeks moving snow? And I'm just like, I don't know what I'm going to do. And I just want to go look at the jobs. I just drove there myself one day. I was like, I got to go look at this and see how bad it is. So I pulled up to the job site, and it's down, the train, it's like in a little ravine. It's in this little valley. So it's down underneath a subway bridge and pulling up, and there's snow everywhere. I'm like, great. And then I get a little bit closer. I'm like, wait a minute. There's all these people down there. Machines and equipment, and the snow is totally cleared. Everything is cleared out of my way. And I was like, what is going on? It's a movie production crew. They were filming a movie down there. So
really?
Cleaned everything up for us. And I was just like, oh my God.
Did you get to be an extra?
No. Oh. I just saw them and I was like, yes. I went and got some Jamaican food and took off. So yeah, this area, they actually filmed, I know they filmed Spider-Man 2 there. There's like a 30-second scene when he's inside one of the tunnels.
Oh, okay.
I would go back to the movie and go, I've been to that tunnel. But they filmed TV shows and movies down there. So this production crew cleared everything out for us. Which was
wow. Got lucky.
Saved us. Yeah, got really lucky.
So what brought you back to Texas?
So what brought me back was a girl in New
Uh-oh.
York.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you met somebody while you were there.
Yeah. So
Okay.
my buddy managed a restaurant on the Upper West Side, and I just randomly met somebody at his restaurant, hit it off, and 4.5 years later, we're back in Houston. So yeah, she got into Rice University for the MBA program.
So is she from here and did like you
So
did, or
she grew up in Plano until like 8th grade. Then they moved to
okay.
So she was in Jersey, and then did musical theater for her undergrad. You know, did the whole New York City musical theater thing. Made a change. You know, wanted to go to business school. So Houston was a good choice. It was either between Dallas or Houston, SMU or Rice. So her parents are in Dallas. My whole family's here, so it wasn't like a crazy move or anything.
Right. So tell us about what you're doing now.
So now I am doing waterproofing. So it's new construction waterproofing. Mostly, I would say 90% is new construction. We do multifamily apartments, commercial buildings, tilt wall jobs. You know, it's education, you know, higher education. We do a lot of work at U of H, Rice, a lot of medical, you know, Memorial Hermann, MD Anderson, Houston Methodist, those type of jobs, kind of like higher end projects is what we go for. So we do building skin, so air barriers, any kind of caulking or sealants, insulation, traffic coatings, you know, metal flashings, through wall flashings, water repellents, pretty much anything on the building skin that repels water.
Okay.
We will do that. Any below grade waterproofing we do too, like bentonite waterproofing, like elevator pits, retaining walls, stuff like that. Type stuff we do. So when I knew I was moving to Houston, I had a conversation with my boss, like, hey, I was up for promotion. I was about to be promoted to a PM at Structural, project manager at Structural. And I was like, hey man, I'm moving. I know you guys have an office in Deer Park in Houston, and it's a little bit different than what we do in New York. They do a lot more civil stuff down here, a lot of infrastructure. There's a lot of big chemical plants here that they do
Right.
stuff like that. So I was like, I know you guys have a office in Houston. Can I talk to them? So he was like, yeah, definitely. They actually need a PM right now. I was like, sweet, this is going to be a super smooth transition. And then I started thinking like, well, let me just see what I'm worth on the market. Why not just check it out? You know, so I got on LinkedIn and started sending my application out to people. And similar, I mean, I send it out to some GCs just to see, send it out to a few other subcontractors, companies similar to Structural, waterproofers, stuff like that. So
where were we? We were talking about you moving back. So you're moving back. You got a girlfriend who's going to Rice,
right.
MBA. You're working for a company now that's doing waterproofing. So let's pick it up from that part.
Yeah, I think we were talking about talking with Structural about coming down to work for them, and they're here as a project manager because
that's right. We were at the PM stage of things.
I was up for promotion to PM.
Right. So there you go.
Structural's got they have a program, kind of I guess it's called a program. Like, so you start as a project engineer and you work through the program. So you get experience being basically an assistant project manager, estimator. So there's an estimating rotation. There's an admin rotation. You have a field rotation where you're in the field, you know, acting as foreman, or if that's the route you want to.
Okay.
Superintendent. You can become an estimator. You can become They even have a business development rotation too. So you go down to their corporate office and you work in the business development team. And if that's the route you want to take, you're able to take that route. It's pretty, it's a unique thing in the industry that they've got a whole roadmap for, you know, where do you see yourself? Where do you want to be? Test all these areas out, see what you like. So they have all that, which is pretty cool. So I did, the last thing I did at structural was the estimating rotation. I thought I was going to hate it. It was great. I liked doing it a lot. Again, you meet even more people. You get exposure to even more projects. You're not on the projects, you know, doing the operations, but you basically get to sit down, learn everything. And the cool, I'm competitive, so the cool part about the estimating thing is how can I beat the other guy? How am I going to do that? So it's not just about being the lowest price. It is for some jobs, but not for everything. It's how can I beat him with experience, or how can I beat him by knowing more than he does? He's not going to read every page. I'm going to read every page. I'm going to know exactly what to do. I'm going to know what to say to the engineer, that kind of stuff. So that kind of drew me in. So I still wanted to do project management in the end. That was kind of the route I was going to take, is to stay project management. But then this whole Houston thing came up, and I was like, cool, let's see what we got in Houston. So they offered me the PM job at Structural in Houston. And then I was like, hey, I appreciate the offer. I'm going to shop around a little bit. So I was shopping around. I got an offer from Texas Moisture Protection as a project manager and estimator. So it's a little bit different, the structure here. So basically, we are salesmen, we are estimators, and we are the project managers. We have an operations team that handles the day-to-day on the job site. They go out, and we got the foremans, we got project coordinators that handle the day-to-day type stuff, interactions with GC superintendent. We financials, you know, we're at the project meetings. We kind of handle the big picture stuff on the project. And what's cool about this is it's all through one person all the way through. So we find the, you know, we're talking to the estimator or whoever it is at the company, like, all right, we find the project, we bid the project, we win the project, and we see the project to the end. So it's in our basket the entire time. There's no like, oh, the estimator screwed up the estimate on this, and that's why we're losing money. Well, you screwed it up. So there's no like pointing fingers. And so I guess the offer I got from Structural was a great offer, especially for Texas. The offer I got from Texas Moisture Protection was also a great offer. There's a lot more potential at this company that I'm at now in terms of just making money. There's a huge bonus program here. So if you kick ass, then you can really make good money. Whereas a lot of other companies, construction companies have bonus programs, but it's based on an aggregate or, you know, the company's performance as a whole. This one is based on personal performance, which is pretty cool. The offers were very similar in terms of that. I mean, Structural is a great company. I knew some people in Texas that knew people from this company. They have an office in Dallas and in Austin, Albuquerque, and Oklahoma City, and Houston, obviously. I knew one of the guys I used to work with in my internship at Western, owner of this company, said he's a great guy. You know, I know a few people there. It's a good company to work for. Definitely give him a shot. So the weird thing was having interviews with these guys like this. Not even, I think I just had phone interviews because I was in New York, and it was just phone interviews. They needed somebody. They sent me the offer, and they didn't have enough vacation on it or something. So I was like, hey, I need more vacation. I need this and that. And they're like, fine, here. And they gave me what I wanted. So I ultimately chose Texas Moisture Protection. I think, you know, the salary and everything was pretty much equal. The ultimate reason I chose Texas Moisture over structural was it was different. So it was
right.
just another opportunity to learn.
Right. Right.
So it was another thing, you know, I've been doing
research.
concrete, for 4 years in New York. I'd be doing the same thing in Texas. I feel like, I mean, I can always learn more about it, but I feel like I know it pretty well. Let me go learn something else now. Just for more personal growth. So
Yep.
that's the reason I chose to go to the new company.
Yep. So what do you think you see yourself doing? You know, the classic. You see yourself staying with these guys for a long time? Do you think you're gonna, you know?
I don't know.
They won't see this part anyway. So.
Well, yeah, hopefully not. It's a great company. The team in Houston's awesome. There's a lot of room for growth with this company. It's a pretty young company. I don't know. I mean, Katie's doing her MBA program, so don't know.
Sometimes
it's kind of up in the air. So I don't know what's going on with that. Where she's gonna get a job. It's
right.
It's just kind of
that's life, right?
There's no way to know. I mean,
right.
What I know is the reason I chose to this industry in college was I was doing, like we talked about earlier, I was doing philosophy. And I love philosophy. I still do. Like my dad got a degree in philosophy, and I had a conversation with my aunt, and she said, I did that in college. I did something that I thought was cool. She did like psychology or something like that. And I have a master's in psychology, and I'm working, I'm making $40,000 a year, and I can't change it now. And she said, basically, like, do something that's going to make you a lot of money. If you hate it, then you can afford to change it. You can go back to school or do that. So I was like, okay, I'll do CIM, and I actually like it a lot. And another really cool thing about this industry is you can go anywhere in the world, really. I mean, you may need to learn Chinese if you're going to China, but you can go anywhere. So if she gets a job in, Lansing, Michigan, I can find a job in Lansing, Michigan. It's hopefully not Lansing, Michigan, but you know what I mean? Like you can go anywhere and get a job in this.
Yeah.
Especially now. I mean, a lot of people are retiring, so there's an even bigger void.
One of the things that I'm picking up from you is that you're not afraid to take a shot at something.
No.
And if you, not that you have to be that way, but there's opportunities that are going to come your way if you're not afraid to try something else.
Right.
And it sounds to me like that's where you are, is you're not afraid to try something else. And actually you see the doing something else as a learning opportunity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing is, like right now, I'm 29 years old now. So now is the time to learn, is the time to build.
Yep.
Everything else will come. So it's an investment in yourself now. And then, once you get all that experience, then you can really cash in on it later. Yep. Hopefully we'll cash in now too, but it's better to build the foundation now than try to, I see guys, even at structural that have been there their whole careers, and they're still been there for 15 years and slowly moving up. And again, it's a great company. If that's what you want to do, great. Like totally do that. It's a great company. There's a lot of companies out there. I know guys that have been at GCs for as long as, 5-6 years, and they're still doing submittals every day, or they're still doing, contract review every day. That's all they do. They get pigeonholed. So that's just not something I was interested in.
Right.
And some people love that. Like they want to do they want to be told what to do every day. They just sit there and do their work and go home. It's not for me.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So I'll ask you one last question, and
Sure.
then we'll because everybody that I talk with, I say, let's plan for the next podcast because there's stuff we haven't talked about. But
Yeah.
um, what would you do differently if there's anything, because it sounds to me like everything has kind of fallen along the path of what you were hoping would be the case. But is there anything that that you look back for as much of hindsight as you have at 29, that you would say, that's one thing I think I wish I would have maybe done a little differently? And you don't have to go, necessarily into great detail, but anything kind of pop up that, man, that was probably the choice I wouldn't have made now.
Nothing really project based. I think one thing that's valuable, and I did it when I was in school, is joining organizations like we were in ACI. I think that was it. Actually, it was just
yeah.
What other ones were there?
Oh well,
there was like the CSA, but that stuff's important. The networking. I wish I would have done more networking.
More of it. Okay.
More now. I didn't do it in New York. But networking is huge, especially in a sales position. Knowing people is a huge help. I mean, there was a company that I was sending out bids for that I wasn't getting any responses from, and I actually found out when I was with Alex and Amy a few weeks ago, like, hey, so-and-so works for this company. I was like, oh, I didn't know that. Let me reach out to this guy and find out if he knows anything. And he was like, yep, let me talk to him. And finally, boom, 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 I'm getting responses. So I think joining more organizations is way underrated in how much it can help you. So doing that now, I'm in a few organizations. I'm the head of one, kind of a 35 and under organization here in Houston. Basically, I mean, all you do is send out an email. It's like, hey, meet us at this brewery. We're going to drink some beers for a few hours and hang out and pass business cards around.
Right.
Talk about nothing. So that's all it is. It's super easy. Company pays for it usually. I mean, just do it. It's a few hours a week. Just go to the organization, meet people. These people are going to be growing into the industry just like you are. You don't know where they're going to be in 10 years. They could be president of the company that you're trying to work with. So
right. Yep.
That's super valuable.
Yep.
Thing that you can do. That's super easy to do, and start young so you can grow your network.
Yep. Well, good talking to you, man. You're looking good. You're looking spiffy.
So are you, man. You still have the same color hair. I like it.
Yeah, but it's a little hard to tell, but I actually am combing it the other way these days.
Combing it the other way?
Yeah,
right.
and you may not, some people take a few seconds and then they go, oh yeah, that's right, he's not wearing glasses. Yep.
Nice.
It's still healing, so I'm still having some issues.
I thought maybe it was just because you're sitting close to the computer.
No.
Totally glasses free.
With all of the stuff that went on for me, I'm now John 2.0.
John 2.0.
That's how I'm referred to at the university.
Got the legs back, got the eyes, got the hair.
I'm 2.1, so there was an update. so I'm now
version 2.1.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. I need a haircut. You can't see from here.
Oh man, mine's bad.
It's getting caveman-y back here. So
I want to go back to school with a ponytail. The professor, the professor with the ponytail, gray hair ponytail.
I remember that guy.
Yep.
Is he a professor now? What's his name?
There's a couple of them on campus.
He was an adjunct when I was there. He taught the.
Oh no, this is a different guy.
Industrial safety class, I think.
Yeah. But I know who you mean. Big husky guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't remember his name.
Yeah, but there's a couple other. But yeah, I thought maybe I should join the gray-haired ponytail club. So
that's a Texas State professor look, right?
It might just happen, because I can't get my hair cut or anything.
Yeah.
So, All right, dude. Thanks for joining me on Let's Be
Yes,
Civil.
sir.
And I'll reach out to you here in the future and get you back on. And when you're up
Yeah,
this
anytime.
way, let me know, and we'll
Yeah,
do
definitely.
the lunch thing or something, especially since the company's going to pay for it. So
Well, we'll see about that.
We'll see about it. All right. Take it easy, man.
All right, you too.
Good talking
See
to
ya.
you. Yep. Bye.
Bye.